Hello and welcome to Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative's Autism Hour with Miss Kimberly Howard.
All right, I am Kim Howard and I work for Kentucky Autism Training Center. We're going to talk about inclusion-based practices. We've kind of done a three-part series. This is the last piece of that bit of information. So last pieces of our inclusion-based practices. And we've talked about quite a bit of different stuff over the last couple of months, but I think one of the most important things that we have to remember sometimes as educators, set a calm, positive tone. If you are calm, then you can help your kids be calm. I can't support someone to a calm place unless I am able to be a little calm my own self. So I always tell school staff, have a phone a friend. I thoroughly believe as teachers that we should be able to call someone and say, need help. I absolutely need help. Please send help, or please, I need 5 minutes of space to keep myself calm. And then here are some strategies for your students. We say breathe, take a deep breath. I know I have said, hey guys, we need to take a deep breath at least a million times. For many students, just the verbal prompting of, hey, why don't you take a deep breath is great. When I take a deep breath, it gives us a pause, right? It's a pausing point for whatever's happening. As the adult responsible, it gives me a minute to gives me a few seconds to come up with whatever we're doing next from hopefully a calm place. And it gives the student a second to get enough air, because if I am in fight, flight, or freeze mode and I am upset, then I am my capability for higher functioning thinking and reasoning is gone, right? So I need to take some breaths to restore that energy to my brain so I can make the right choice. And there's some hope that I'll be able to do that. So a couple of strategies. On my left side of the screen, you can see just a little index card, and it has some strategies for breathing. Obviously, this is a student who reads, right? They read really well. Breathe in and out through the mouth, in, hold, out. Some counting strategies for counting slowly in your head. I will say maybe, yeah, and this says 1 through 20, so it gives the child a stopping place for counting in their head. And it gives them a couple of other strategies. Ask for a break, ask to go get a drink. For a child to be able to say, I need to get a drink of water, and to let them escape for a minute, hopefully while they're still having appropriate behavior, is wonderful. A really good plan. On the right side of the screen, you can see it says square breathing, and it's more of a larger amount of visual support. So it has breathe in for 4 seconds. Everybody breathe in with me. Hold for 4 seconds. Breathe out for 4 seconds. Hold for 4 seconds. So it's square breathing. We're going to breathe all the way around the square. Great, a couple of options, and there are a million different strategies that you can use for calming down and helping our students calm down. And I think we definitely want to stick with that calm voice when we're speaking. A lot of being an educator is having a really good game face. I'll never forget my first year of teaching when I realized that since I was a teacher, it meant when things were not going well, I was the person who could not run out of the room at that point. It was before the time when I realized I really needed a tag team to help me out if possible. So give facts in an unemotional voice. Right now, I need you to sit in the chair. Or right now, you have 2 options. You can sit in at the table, or you can sit at your desk. Where would you like to sit? So it gives them some choice and control, right? Express information in a logical sequence. Here are the things I need you to do. And then be careful. If you are an intense, passionate, or stressed out person, which probably at this point in the year, all of us are, then try to control those pieces if you're able, with the reality that we're human, right? It is hard sometimes to be calm. So I always tell educators to have a plan. If I have a student that, or multiple students that I have frequent difficult behavior with, or they know how to get my goat, or they know what my triggers are, I always tell teachers it's really important to know what your own triggers are. So what makes you upset? For me personally, if you bite me, if a child bites me, I had a pretty significant bite injury many years ago now. And to this day, if you bite me, no matter how minor it is, I have to be really cautious about how I respond. Right. So as a person who knows my own self, right, it's very important for me to know what are my triggers and to know what are my students' triggers. And it's good information to have. So that is another great place to start from when you're thinking about calm teacher, calm student. What are adult triggers? Because we all have triggers. We all have things that we cannot tolerate. And sometimes students figure those out. I worked with a student, I'm going to go back one screen. I worked with a student many years ago that I had a really wonderful SLP aide that came into my classroom to do speech therapy with him. And he was a student who liked it when he liked a big response. He was very attention seeking and he didn't mind how he got that attention. Soggy, if he was in trouble, it was just as good of attention as if you gave him lots of praise at that point in his academic career. So he figured out he spit on the speech therapy aide, which spitting is a hard behavior to tolerate, right? No one wants to be spit on. But her response was she screamed and cried, which was not a wrong response. It's a human response, right? No one wants to be spit on. She was very unexpected. And so the student figured out that was her trigger. So every time she saw him, every time he saw her for a little while, he would spit on her to set off her trigger because he figured it out. So we had to put some things into place, and for a little while, put definitely some things into place to control and fix that behavior, and give him a lot of other options to get attention versus spitting. So sometimes it is very hard to be calm teacher and calm student. So I say that with that reality. But if we can start from I can't bring you down from an upset place if I'm not calm myself. So one visual support or one pathway to help you do that is a contingency map. So a contingency map, and we're going to see a picture next, is a pathway to help the student get what they want appropriately. So how do I get what I want? How can I get what I want? So this is a contingency map. So a contingency map is just a pathway, a visual pathway to get what I want. So the black box is the trigger, or this is what started us off. Here's what's happening. The green boxes at the top are here's what we want to happen. And then what is our naturally occurring reinforcer, right? Or the bottom pathway is our red pathway, and that is the pathway we don't want students to take. So the first box in that is the problem behavior. And then what's the natural outcome of engaging in that problem behavior? So let me show you a couple examples of that. So first example, and these could be picture-based or they could be written words. And we do these in our head all the time. As functional adults, we do these in our head fairly frequently. So when math class is over, is my trigger behavior, and I am working on the computer. So the top pathway is the pathway we want them to do. When math class is over and I am working on the computer, I get off the computer and go to my next class. And then I earn a token for extra computer time in the afternoon. Or the bottom pathway is the pathway we don't want them to engage in. And it's probably the behavior that they are doing that is causing you to utilize this. That's my tip of the week, right? Whatever behavior it is that they're engaging in that you're like, that you need this visual support, that's what's going to go on this bottom part. So this student is, I did not get off the computer, so I don't earn extra computer time in the afternoon. So that is one example. Now here is a picture-based example. And this is called making a choice, and they lost a game. So our trigger is sometimes I lose a game. So if they follow the green pathway, and this pathway is showing they're doing two things on both parts. So first I take a deep breath if I lose a game, and I say, good game. Then what happens? My friends are happy with me. That's the natural consequence. But if I lose a game and I follow the red pathway, I whine or cry and I run away, then my friends don't want to play with me. These are called contingency maps. They are really easy to utilize and get started with. And if this is something that you're interested in, I have some resources for it. So really easy. They could be written or picture based. So that's the part that I like about contingency maps. All right, what's another option? Another option, this is called a social autopsy. So a social autopsy for our students that are out there in the regular classroom that have autism and are being included into the regular classroom every day, social errors are very likely to happen. Navigating and understanding social errors may contribute to not being a calm student, not being a calm adult. So this is just called it's literally a social autopsy. So what is an autopsy? Well, an autopsy is where we take things apart to figure out what happened so that the next time it doesn't happen again. So what happened? What was the social error? Who was hurt by this error? What should be done to correct the error? What should I do next time? So one of the places that I've seen this be used is when a student engages. So they were at recess and they misunderstood what was happening, or they were in class and they engaged in some type of social error. So the nice thing about this is it could be picture based, but probably I'm using this with students that are able to read and engage in higher level academics, if that makes sense. So this is going to be done with those autism level 1 students that are out there in the regular classrooms that may be committing social errors. And it gives you a way to, it's basically a graphic organizer to kind of chunk the information so that they can the most important thing is to me is what should I do next time? How do I correct this error? And then what can I do next time? So the student doesn't keep repeating the same social errors over and over. So I do like that. So one of the things that I want you to think about as we are going through today is how are we promoting independence? How are we promoting independence for our students? And I'm going to show you some different things that we could maybe use for that. Oh, maybe there we go. Okay, so one of the things that we can do is listen to the words of our students. Listening to the words is very important. Often, students with autism speak in a monotone voice. So their voice, you can't read what's happening based on their voice or their facial expressions. Their facial expression may not match what's going on. So they might be smiling, but they're really upset. Or they could be, their face may be what we call flat affect, meaning they don't have a lot of facial expression, but it's very hard to predict what's going on internally based on that. So to detect the true meaning, we've got to listen and probe to what the student is actually saying. So one of the great strategies is seek and offer clarification. Clarification is so important. So if a student says, I can't do this, probe further. What does this mean? And I can't do this could mean a lot of different things, right? Maybe it means I can't find my book. Maybe it means I don't understand the directions. Maybe it means I have to go to the bathroom right now and I can't do this assignment until after I go. Maybe I can't do this means I can't concentrate because I am super upset that I lost my favorite Pokemon card, or insert whatever card that you would like there. And the other piece is maybe my pencils broke and there's a rule that we can only sharpen pencils between classes. So I have seen, number one, I can't find my book. And I have seen, I don't understand the directions. I had a teacher that she gave a lot of directions. She verbally gave out probably 4 or 5 part directions. And it was the high school class. But words disappear, right? So if I'm telling a student who probably has executive functioning issues, 4 or 5 directions in one opportunity, that's a lot of words that can be forgotten quickly. And maybe the student is going to focus in on the first 1 or 2 parts of the direction, and then they forget about the other 3 parts because they can't hold all of those into their working memory. I have also seen number 5 come into effect. So my pencil lead was broke. And the rule is that we can only sharpen pencils between classes. So I had a student, I was in a classroom and there was a student, everybody was doing their math problems. I think it was middle school, high school age. Everyone was doing their math problems, independent work, and they were just sitting there. And you could see a somewhat panicked face. And when the teacher said, "Hey, you need to get started," he said, "I can't do this. I can't do this." And she took it to mean that he didn't understand how to do it without kind of probing. And so she started giving him more um, sort of a really good one-to-one instruction on how to do it. And after she spent like 10 or 15 minutes with him going over again how to do the problems, he said, "I can't do this. My pencil is broke." And so his pencil was broke and he couldn't do it because they did have a rule that you have to sharpen your pencil before class. And it was a big deal. If your pencil broke, what you were supposed to do. So they were supposed to all have a couple of sharpened pencils, but he um, wasn't super successful at that. Okay, other things that we can think about are provide reassurance. As the adult in the classroom, if you're a classroom teacher, if you are a classroom aide, for students with autism, school is hard. For many students, school may be very hard. It's a complicated social environment. There are the academic, I mean, not throwing out all the academic pieces, navigating the social environment of school can be a major challenge. So one of the things that we can do for our students is provide reassurance and to give them some strategies and some support. So strategies to help students feel confident and composed. Provide a daily schedule and refer back to it frequently. I do personally love daily schedules, and I do love that many high school and middle schools use like a daily agenda. I think if you have a student who has a daily agenda, jot their schedule. It can just be written, handwritten. Maybe you've typed it out, whatever. Have their schedule in there so they know what is going to happen next, what happens first, what's going to happen next, and where do we go from here. So definitely think about that. Because if I don't know my daily schedule, um, it's going to cause me a lot of anxiety. It's going to cause me to be stressed out and worried and fearful about what's happening. I need to know where I need to be. And as an adult, I use a daily schedule all the time. I use a monthly schedule. I use a weekly schedule. Sometimes I use an hour by hour schedule. It depends on the day. So teaching a student to use a schedule is a lifelong skill that they're going to use. This is going to be something that's going to carry over to the workplace. So this is essentially a skill everyone needs to be able to use a schedule. So definitely consider a schedule, and they can look like a lot of things. Maybe you have a student who does not know how to read a clock. Or maybe they do know how to read a clock, but they need a more specific timer. So on the screen is something called a time timer. These are great. These are really awesome for students that are too young to read a standard clock, or students that struggle with their like clock-based literacy. So you set the time. If I set this to 40 minutes, as the time is gone, the red disappears. So that's how I can tell. This could also be an egg timer. It could be, there are a phenomenal amount of timers that are online. A time timer also has an app, and I don't think it's very much, maybe less than $5. There's a lot of options for a timer. A timer is a fabulous place to help students see the passage of time. For many students that have ADHD, autism, executive functioning issues, their focus and their ability to tell how much time has passed may be skewed. And so what I mean by that is maybe it's been 5 minutes, but it feels like it's been 2 hours to them. And so I've had a lot of students say, "We've been working at this for 7 hours." And I'm like, "No, guys, we've been doing this for 15 minutes. So I would set a timer that shows, you know what, we're going to work on this literacy skill that we're working on, or maybe we're working on writing a paper right now, we're going to work on this part of it for the next 10 minutes. And so I will set a timer so that students are less worried about how much time has passed and more focused on the assignment that I have given them. Non-literal language associated with time. So just a second. Do we really mean just a second? No, no, we don't. I had a few students over the years that will count 1,000. And that can definitely cause major problems. As a teacher, it makes me set on fire. What do you mean 1 second? I literally said just a second. And that non-literal language for anything beyond time, definitely time, but for all things, maybe we're saying things like it's raining cats and dogs. Well, they're going to look for the cats and dogs. Maybe we're using a lot of sarcasm or other non-literal language that can pose a large problem for students with autism and students with related disabilities. So break tasks down into segments, into small parts, and communicate how long each task is expected to take. So I'll tell you, when I was in graduate school, one of my graduate courses was writing a thesis paper. If you've ever wrote a thesis paper, they are quite large. And they involve a lot of work. And I was utterly terrified. I am, on some things, I'm a terrible I can't say that word, procrastinator. There we go. I'll wait until the last minute. Well, you can't wait until the last minute to write a 50-page paper. Or you could, but it will not be advisable. So my university professor apparently had worked with first-year graduate students many times and had experienced that. So what she did was she broke that big task that took a whole semester into pieces. So our thesis statement was due a month into class. We had to have so many references by this point. We had to have the first, 15 pages written and submitted to her by midway course. So at different points across that one assignment, she broke it into smaller pieces and then said, here's when this is due. And maybe this is about how much effort and how many hours of work you should expect to put into this. So now bring that back to school and our students. Everybody loves the science fair project, right? It's the famous project that families are working on, the night before frantically. But maybe it's a high school paper. Hopefully it's not 50 pages, right? Maybe it's a 3-page high school paper. So I partnered with and worked with a few high school classrooms over the year. So student perfectly capable of writing that paper academically wise, but executive functioning wise and attention span wise, we broke that task down into many smaller pieces. So the first week, his job was to come up with a topic and the main idea of what his paper was going to be about. And then the next week, he was going to write the first few paragraphs. So we broke that task down and kind of gave him a timeline of this should take you, maybe you're going to spend an hour on this assignment right now. So thinking about that, how can we break tasks into smaller pieces and then help students complete them? Reduce uncertainty is another major thing that you can do for students with autism. So students with autism become very anxious if they feel inadequate. And don't we all, right? If I feel like I'm not doing something well, or I feel like something that I'm working on isn't going well, I become very anxious and stressed out. I mean, it's pretty much a human emotion, right? So they may not ask questions. So we don't always know what they understand or what they don't understand. And they may struggle to sequence events. So they're not sure what to do sometimes. And then go back to part 2 here, and they're not going to ask questions to clarify always. So some of the things that we can do, we know that our students with autism live in an unpredictable, puzzling, and stressful world. One of the self-advocates that I've talked to said that having autism is like it's having a Mac computer brain and living in a PC world. So it's a different operating system sometimes. And when we interface It may go really smoothly or it might not. So as educators, we are responsible for teaching content, but we're also teaching independence, right? That's the other piece, is we're thinking far into the future. So when I teach a student how to use a visual support, when I teach a student how to use, maybe we're using that contingency map, I'm showing them a visual pathways. As an adult, I do a visual pathway in my head all the time. On that contingency map, so my contingency map in my head this year was, it's Christmas, right? It was Christmas. And my green pathway, the pathway that I hope I go, is I plan and I budget for Christmas. And then I get to eat and live in January, right? My red pathway, the pathway that I have unfortunately engaged in, thankfully I didn't this year, but many years, I've engaged in my red pathway, which is the pathway I don't want to go. And so I have engaged in, I don't set a budget and I don't plan for Christmas, and I spend way more money than I should. And then in January, I cannot eat or live. It's ramen, right? It's ramen and bologna for January if I'm not careful. So I do this in my head as an adult, right? We do these kinds of things in our head, but for our students with autism, we need to make them more visual for them. And then eventually, as they grow older and as they get more successful, then they will internalize those pathways. And maybe they'll need less visual supports, or maybe not. Many students with autism will need and utilize visual supports their whole entire life. Most of these strategies that we've talked about over the last couple of weeks are fairly easy to use, right? Most of them are pretty straightforward. We've talked about visual supports, we've talked about visual schedules, we've talked about cue cards, we've talked about contingency maps, we've talked about a ton of different options here. But until we get good at it as adults, as educators, we just kind of have to think it through a little bit more and then practice it out until it becomes more automatic to go towards those strategies. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kim. I appreciate your presentation this afternoon. It was very useful information, and we will see you again next time. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.